Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
A little bit better, right? Could be better. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Now it's better. Hope you all have a very a very happy Christmas. Welcome, everyone. We continue talking about Jesus. This is the last Sunday of the month, but in this month have been talking about Jesus, and Joe will talk about the works of the last hour. But before we start, I'm going to invite our friend Denise to do the reading and the prayer.
I'm gonna read the preface of the Gospel according to Spiritism. Like an immense army setting out upon receiving its orders, the spirits of the Lord, who are the powers of heaven, have fanned out over the entire face of the earth. Like failing stars, they have come to illumine the way and open the eyes of the blind. Verily, I tell you that the time has come in which all things must be reestablished according to their true meaning, in order to dissipate the darkness, to confound the proud and to glorify the righteous. The great voice of heaven resound like trumpets, and the chorus of angels have assembled together. Men and women, we invite you to divine concert. May your hands take up the lyre. May your voice be as one, and like a sacred hymn, expand and vibrate from one end of the universe to the other. Men and women, brothers and sisters, whom we love, we are here beside you. Love one another also, and say from the bottom of your hearts, in obedience of the will of your Father who is in heaven, Lord, Lord, and you shall enter the kingdom of the heaven, the Spirit of the truth. Brothers and sisters, let us close our eyes and ask God our Father, Jesus our Masters, to open our eyes, open our ears to listen the message that our friend Joe is gonna try to pass that to us, and mainly open our hearts to absorb the message and put that in practice every day. Thank you, so be it.
Thank you, Marco. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It's such a pleasure to see how many smiling faces here. This last lecture of the year, it's usually the best one to give. Why? Because everybody's coming out of Christmas. Everybody has that shine of love, of joy, has spent time with their family, their relatives, and their friends. And hopefully for most of us, had a little bit of time to think about the meaning of Christmas, meaning of the life and death of our Lord Jesus Christ. And that's why the TSS dedicates the last month for lectures that are focused on the gospel. Today, I'm going to talk to you about one special parable, one that always confused me a lot, and that's why I read it so many times, hoping that one day I still may be able to understand it fully. But I'd like to share with you this morning what I've learned, and hopefully you guys can share with me what you think about this story. It is a story about the workers of the last hours. Let's just kind of recap a little bit that all of the material we're going to be presenting here comes out of the Gospel according to Spiritism. So this was the second book that Kardec wrote, right after the Spirit's book. Well, the third one. The third one was after the Medium's book. And what Kardec was struggling with is that living in a Catholic world, as he did in France in the 19th century, he was often challenged by the beliefs that Catholicism had been promoting for centuries, all based on the stories of the gospel. And in some ways, people would challenge him that says, the gospel says this and Spiritism is saying something different. He knew that it wasn't different. It was just a different way of looking at the same stories with different explanations. That's why he felt it was so important to dedicate an entire book to explaining the gospel according to what he and others in the Spiritist movement at the time had learned. And he every one of his books has a little long subtitle, not a little big subtitle. And the one for this book said, "The Explanation of the Moral Maxims of Christ in Concordance with Spiritism in their applications to the different circumstances of life." So it's not supposed to explain everything in the Bible. It's not a re-edition of the Bible. It's not a new story at all, but it's just a new explanation based on what Spiritism had brought forward in terms of the ideas, especially around the immortality of the soul through multiple lives. And right at the beginning, he feels it's very important, Kardec feels it's very important to remind us the difference between blind faith and unshakable faith that only comes through logic, through true belief. In other words, he was telling us that for us to follow the gospel, we must believe it because deep inside us that belief has incorporated into every aspect of our soul. And he feels that can only be done if it's done through the reason. Why would God have given us the ability to reason if not to challenge, not to try to understand every facet? And he understands that this must be true with faith as well. So as he evolved and he codified Spiritism, this idea of a rational faith was permeating at every instance. Every time he would retell one of the Gospel's parables, he would try to make sure that it was fully within what we understand as our current reason. And I say our current reason because we are evolving. Humanity is evolving. We're individually, spirits are evolving. So our reasons will evolve. But at this point, these stories make sense to us. So I'll be talking to you this morning about chapter 20 of the book. It's called The Workers of the Last Hours. And with it comes a lot of famous maxims such as the last shall be first. And it's interesting that is with every chapter in the Gospel according to Spiritism, there is the initial reading from the Gospel, and then there is the explanations of the spirits. So it's not Kardec that's providing all of the explanations, but the spirits themselves are coming and trying to explain what is the purpose of those stories. And this one in particular talks towards the mission of us Spiritists. So that's why I always find it's very appropriate as we're kind of finalizing the year. We're kind of remembering everything that happened to us this year, being grateful, being blessed with all of the things that was given to us by God. That we also reflect upon why do we do the things we do? Why should we continue to do the things that we do? And this parable speaks a lot to that. In English, you also find this title for the same parables called The Laborers or the Workers in the Vineyard. And I'm sure most, if not all of you, have heard this story before. So it starts that the kingdom of heaven is like a father of a family who went out at daybreak in order to hire workers to work in his vineyards. So at that time, the small family farms, they didn't have employees. They had day workers. So they would go out to a place in the town and in the village, and the people who wanted to work were there, and they would hire them, and they would come work for the day, and they would do this every day, especially through the harvest season. So Jesus is telling us that he's going to tell us a little story, but he wants us to think that he's really talking about the kingdom of heaven. And we'll allow the spirits to explain to us why that's the case. So he goes out to the village and he finds the first workers. There were a few there early on, 6 o'clock in the morning. And, guys want to work? Sure, we want to work. And so he offers, okay, how about if I pay you 1 denarius for your work today? That must have been the normal fare, normal fees for 1 day work. And he says, great, we'll go out there. So he comes back to the farm and they start working. But there wasn't enough for them. He needed more workers. There wasn't that many there at 6 o'clock. So the father of this family went out again at the 3rd hour of the day. So this is now, first hour is 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. He goes out and he sees other workers. So now some of the guys who are a little bit later waking up, they show up and they're waiting for somebody to hire them. And you guys still want to work? Sure, we want to work. So he hires them as well. And he does this a few times during the day. He then at the 6th, the 9th hour. So it was not easy to find people to work at his farm. The father had to proactively go out there and search for people. But he never gave up. He had his vineyard. He needed the workers. So he was willing to go search for them and offer them the work. And then finally at the 11th hour, so this was from 6 to 6 or 6 to 5 p.m. An hour before everybody was to go home, he yet again goes back, right? And he found other people there. They weren't there before. Suddenly they showed up, but it's late in the day. So the father asks, why have you stood around all day without working? I'm sure there would have been many different explanations. We all have excuses for not working. They told him it was because no one had hired them. So they had been there before, but maybe they had not seen the father looking for them. They were looking for other areas. They were interested in working in other vineyards. But that didn't work out. So the father still needed more people to work. So said, okay, you too, go to my vineyard. But now these workers will be there for a very short time for that day. So far, nothing mysterious. This must have been a story that would have happened many, many times as people were fighting for the workers or trying to find workers, or workers were scrambling to find the right place to work. So now we have a good arrangement. We have somebody who needs workers who needs to work. And now they all seem to be in good shape. Now, so here comes the end of the day. These workers were paid cash at the end of each day. They worked hard and they wanted to be paid. So the owner of the vineyard, the father, said to the one who was taking care of his business, the foreman, who actually would pay out these workers, call the workers and pay them from the last to the first. And that's interesting in itself. Why would he pay the workers who worked the least hours first? Any ideas? Well, he didn't want them to feel that they were being discriminated in any way. Because just because they were the last to come, they were not to be considered different or inferior to any other the workers who had been there. But now comes the question of how much would they be paid? Right? So those that had not come to the vineyard except when the 11th hour was near received 1 denarius. Isn't that interesting? They worked 1 hour, they receive the full day's pay. It's a very, very generous father or worker or owner of the vineyard. He felt that they came, they worked, even if it wasn't for the full day, they were still paid 1 denarius. And those then that were hired at the 9th hour, the 6 hours, the 3rd hour, they were all coming next in the lineup. And they were also given 1 denarius. And they were surprised. What would you have expected? If this owner is so generous He's got so much money to give that he's giving 1 denarius to someone who only works for an hour, then he surely is going to recognize that I worked 3, 4, even 12 times more than those guys, and that I will get more money. I will get more than 1 denarius. So they were creating this expectation, waiting to see how much they would be paid. How much were they paid? 1 denarius. And what did they do, these workers? They complained, they whined, they felt they were being unjusticed. Right? Because why would I work 12 hours and get 1 denarius, where I could have stayed home, sleeping, having lunch for the other 11 hours, and then just come here and made the same amount of money? Can't be fair. They were angry at the owner of the vineyard. But, the owner was perplexed. He said, listen, my friend, I have done you no wrong. Right? Did you not agree with me on 1 denarius for your day's work? Wasn't that what I went out there and you said that you'd be willing to work for 1 denarius? And you said yes, right? Take what belongs to you and go. As for me, I wish to give to the last as much as to you. It is not permitted for me to do what I want. And is your eye evil because I'm good? So now he's setting up the stage here. He says, listen, it is no business of yours what I give to others. You should only care what you do and what reward you receive in return for your work. Tough lesson, right? Some of these may not want to work with that vineyard again. Which may sound silly, doesn't it? Because if he tries to work with another owner at another vineyard, he'll probably make the same denarius, 1 denarius only, or he might even get less because there might be a harsher owner that's probably paying less than. So it is a hard lesson for us because it reflects a lot on jealousy here. Right? We put upon ourselves our value, and unfortunate, often this value is associated with some monetary amount. So in this case, each one of those workers were feeling diminished. They felt jealous of the other folks who were there for fewer hours, and they seemed to have been valued just the same by the owner as I was. And I worked so much harder. Now think of us, how often this has happened in our lives. I'm sure that, I know it has happened many times in my life, and I'm certain that for most of you, at one point in time, you felt that you were not being rewarded for what you were worth. And there were people around who said, yeah, go out there, complain, because you're worth a lot more than that. Why is he doing this? Is not fair. So we create this sense of fairness and justice. But we forget many other facets of what is happening to us during that one day. So Matthew 20:16, it's a very famous, or one of the top 10 famous statements in the Bible. It says, the last shall be first, the first shall be last. For many are called, but few are chosen. So here, Matthew is reminding us that our value is not whether we're first or last, but whether if we're prepared to be one of those who are called and are chosen at the end. And what must we do to hear that call? And what actions must we take for us to be chosen? Obviously, in the parable, the owner felt that the workers who came in the 11th hour were just as worthy to be chosen as those who were there before. It is a difficult lesson because we're so attached to material thoughts. We use material, especially money, to often be the determinant to be how we value people, and more important, how we value ourselves. If we feel that we're not getting paid enough, whether it's true or false, it has impact on our self-esteem. It creates anger, it creates jealousy, it creates greed within us. This is not to say that we should not be rewarded for the good things we do. After all, that is one of the basic laws that we have in the universe. It's the law of action and reaction, cause and effect. So if we do good, we should get our rewards at some time. But that's the key word, sometime. And in what currency is that reward going to come back to us? So do you think that the workers who were there from the beginning of the day, were they receiving any other type of reward? If we think purely in the physical hard labor that they were doing, they weren't getting any other reward. They were actually giving, right? They were not receiving. They were giving their sweat. They were giving their muscles, their pains, and the thirst and hunger that goes with hard work. And what they expected back was money. But interesting, they got what they were promised. They were still not happy. So we thank the spirits because now they try to provide us a little bit of clarity into what this all means to us. Good spirits, my dearly beloved, you are all workers of the last hour. So now he's saying that we are not the ones who were there at 6 a.m. We were not the ones who were there at 8 a.m., 9, 11. We are the ones who were there at the 11th hour. The one who says, I began work at daybreak and I will finish only at nightfall would be very proud. So here we start to understand a little bit that there is this reward. If we look at the vineyards no longer as a physical place on earth, but the kingdom of heaven, that working from the beginning to the end has its own special reward. We will be very proud. What he's saying is that the 1 denarius is not our reward. It's the reason we go in first. So everybody goes into the vineyard for the same 1 denarius. But every minute that we work in the vineyard of the God, we're receiving a reward. And what is our reward? Does anybody know? Is it God's love? God loves us unconditionally. We don't need to do anything to get that reward. And here is a bit of the irony or the difference between Spiritist view of evolution than many other religions. Our reward is the privilege to work. It is the blessing to serve the Lord. What greater reward could we have? So if you think that way, and you're that first worker who was there at 6 a.m., I'm going to say to the 11th hour, it says, you guys been missing a lot because I've been here for 11 hours and I've been having the greatest time of my life. I have found peace, I have found harmony, I have found ways to be useful to others. And you're late, but welcome. Because from now on, you will be able to enjoy those same benefits. You all came when you were called. Some a little earlier, some a little later. And the calling was that denarius. Denarius was the first, and for us, individually, each one will have a different demarius, or why we answer the call. The lessons are the same, the words are the same, but they hit us differently. Why I became a Spiritist is probably different than, well, almost certainly than why everyone else becomes a Spiritist. But that's the demarius, that's the promise, a simple promise. The reward is, coming and doing the work. To the incarnation whose shackles you bear. However, for how many centuries has the Lord been calling you to this vineyard without you wanting to enter it? And here's where Spiritism really brings in different concepts. So it's not like, I became a Spiritist when I was in my 40s. So it's not like I waited 40 years to become a Spiritist. Probably 2,000 years or more before I became a Spiritist. Now, I'm a very slow learner. Others have joined earlier. That's the idea. That's kind of where we need to go beyond our limited understanding of the physical world and our physical life at this point. Put it into context now, that if we are joining for eternity now, these 2,000 years would have seemed like the second hour or the first hour. And many others that will follow us who still need to hear the calling. Many other workers still to be workers of the 11th hour are waiting to receive the same blessing that we're receiving. And that is what we're going to see the mission of the Spiritists. How many centuries has the Lord been calling you to this vineyard? Think about this. Now is the time for you to receive your wages. So that's why we come to work. That's why we come here a couple of days after Christmas, where we could be with our family, our friends, to learn, to be together, to enjoy our company, and to offer ourselves to work in the vineyard of the Lord. Is it a sacrifice? It shouldn't be. If that's what you think, you still haven't heard the calling. If you think whatever you do, whatever your actions, whatever effort you put in, if you're doing this because you think you have to, or because somebody has told you, or because you think others think this is the right thing to do, you're still not quite there. And you can't enjoy your wages because you don't have your eyes open and your heart open for the real benefit that this does to us. It is a bit of a self-serving irony that we work so hard to benefit ourselves. But that is the mercy nature of God. And imagine if this wasn't so. Imagine that, somebody lives a life or two, they find the calling to the Lord, and then suddenly they are put into eternal pleasure and vacation. No more work. How would we evolve? Aren't we lucky and so fortunate to have received so many explanations and lessons for spirits that have gone through life as we have and now are at a higher level, more evolved, more pure? Why should they keep working? Don't they deserve kind of spiritual retirement forever? What is retirement? Well, in our understanding, retirement is a time where we don't have to do things we didn't want to, and we can relax and enjoy things we do. Right? To travel, to stay home, take care of your grandchildren, to do nothing. Right? So it's a time for you to be rewarded for the work of a lifetime. higher spirits, they thrive. They can't wait to work. Because that's what they have done, preparing all their existence, is to be able to do this work. To be closer to God. What greater reward can be there for you, for a spirit? What greater reward can be to shepherd, to help, to try to help each one of us avoid just a few of the many mistakes they made, so we don't suffer as much, that we can accelerate our evolution. And for us, as we accelerate our evolution, what should we be doing? Helping others. Employ the time you have remaining well, and never forget that your existence, no matter how long it may seem to you, is only a fleeting instance in the immensity of time comprising eternity to you. If the work, the charity is our reward, why wait? Why say, okay, I'm old, I'm tired, I don't have the same energy. Maybe I'll wait until my next incarnation because I'll be young again, I'll be strong, and I can do all the good stuff back then. Right? No, this is not the type of thing you should procrastinate. Because every day of what's remaining of this existence is an opportunity for you to enjoy the blessings of working for the Lord. Why waste it? It's like somebody giving a lottery ticket and you say, I don't want it now, I'll wait until I'm reborn again because then I'll be young. We wouldn't do that. That lottery ticket is the understanding of our mission. So this was by the spirit Constantine, it's also known as a protector spirit. So for those who maybe haven't read the Gospel According to Spiritism, it's a very unique book. Because as we're doing here, it tells the context of what is told in the Bible, and then spirits come to us in writing and explain a different way of looking at that story. Is another spirit talking to us now. As the last to arrive, spiritists profit from the intellectual endeavors of their predecessors, because humans must inherit from humans, and their endeavors and results are collective. God blesses solidarity. Have we, in many other lectures, we talk about the evolution and the transition of planets. How planets go from early stages, very primitive, and as the spirits in that planet evolve, so does the planet. But one thing is true. We can't have a small part of the population evolving alone and leaving behind all of the injustice and all of the ignorance to the vast majority. We need to bring everybody up. How do we do that? Working, educating, charity. Those are the instruments that we have to help each other. I always like the analogy that imagine a kind of a abstract painting where you have thousands of ladders going up to heaven. And each ladder has one person going up. It's like Jacob's ladder as well. That's our evolution. We need to go up that ladder. Now imagine that you're not alone. Billions of ladders around you, and you have a rope connected to every other person in every other ladder. So what happens if you try to go up too fast? Everybody else will hold you back. And to make things more interesting, we have shorter ropes with some people, longer ropes with other people. Typically, we have very short ropes with family members that create that familiar nucleus that we talk so much about, or our friends, or our relatives, or acquaintances. So in this analogy, you see that the whole evolution of everybody needs to kind of go up those ladders, roughly at the same time. It doesn't mean that some people are not a little bit higher, other people a little bit lower, because we do have those ropes. But it reaches a point that we can't move on. And that is the work of the vineyard that we do. It's not us going up the ladder. It's us helping everyone by helping pull the rope so they can go up with us. It's not about bringing people down who are higher than us, but using them to leverage and help us pull up to where they are. That's what the higher spirits do. That's why they provide us guidance, ideas, instructions, explanations. That's why they pull our ears every so often to let us, remind us that's what we need to do. So this continues. The reincarnation, that wonderful tenet, both immortalizes and defines spiritual affliction. The spirit understands the continuity of the task, interrupted but always resumed once again. So what is answering the call to work in that vineyard is to understand the task first. What is being asked of us? What is the work? In the parable, the work is to harvest the grapes. What is God asking us to do as spiritists? To first educate ourselves, improve ourselves so that we can help others. It's like the airplane, right? When the masks come down, you have to put the mask first on you before you help others. So we need to educate ourselves so we can do the right thing when helping others. But Kardec understood this so well that he creates this wonderful tenet that says, without charity, there is no salvation. There is no salvation for us individually. There is no salvation for us as humanity. Charity, understood as us helping others, is the basic work of our vineyard. And all workers of the first and last hour, with their eyes open to the profound justice of God, no longer complain, but simply worship. So he's talking about the workers who are complaining. Right? Why should they be complaining? They got what they promised, and if they really open their heart, they will realize they got so much more that they want to marry us. This is one of the true meanings of this parable. Like all the parables that Jesus addressed to the people, beneath its form and images, it contains, this is important, the seed of the future as well as the revelation of the magnificent unity that harmonizes all things in the universe. We are all connected. We all have ropes to each other. And until we realize that, we will continue to be selfish. We continue to kind of minimize other people, offend people, be bigots, be cruel with others. And that solidarity that we have between us reconnects all present beings to the past and to the future. All the actions of our past, actions that we performed, actions that were done against us, these are all of the inheritance that we carry with us. And only through the work, only through the charity in the vineyard, can we start to completely heal those connections. And we can start to raise everybody together. So what is the mission of the Spiritists? The time is near for the fulfillment of those things proclaimed by the transformation of humankind. Blessed will be those who have worked in the Lord's fields selflessly and with no other motive than charity. So that is our work. We don't have grapes to collect or to harvest. we have charity. And charity, as we know, comes in so many different forms. It's not the commercial charity that often we hear so much, especially this time of the year, about giving money, giving food. A true charity is allowing us to help our brothers and sisters to reconnect with God and understand the mission that they have in their existence and the reasons for the hardships that they may have in this life. God is taking a census of his faithful servants and is taking note of those who only have the appearance of devotion, so that they may not usurp the wages of the courageous servants, because it is for those who do not recoil before their task that God will entrust the most difficult positions in the great work of our generation through Spiritism. So it's not God playing favorites here. It's not saying that we're better, we're worse, or that the others were worse than us, but it's a recognition that there's a lot of work ahead. And you need serious, devoted workers to make it happen. Nothing stalls a mission more than people who are there to do nothing, to occupy the space of others who could be working and are put in a position to just be dead weight. That's usually the joke that we have about government bureaucracy, isn't it not? That all of these people in the middle exist so nothing happens. Right? Same idea here. God needs to not punish those who might be trying, and to be fair, many believe that they are trying, that they're doing the right thing. But deep down, they are not. They don't have the commitment. They may not have studied enough. They may not have the purity of heart in what they're doing. Often they are idealists, but they also want to profit. They want to get something back for everything they're doing. And that is the most evident sign that they're not prepared. And these words will be fulfilled. The first will be the last, and the last will be the first in the kingdom of heaven. Little kind of comedy moment here. This is a comedy, so I don't know if anybody can read it, but I'll read it. The first one says, "Every time I read this story, it's unfair all over again." The other one is saying the reign of God isn't fair, it's merciful. And we do not understand the difference between that. We think often that fairness is more important than mercy. And mercy is good for saints, but that we need justice all the time, right? Fairness. Is that supposed to make me feel better? The other one says it depends on whether you need mercy or not. We always feel ourselves to be so superior. Those of us, and I at fault as this as anybody else, probably more than other people, we like to think that we know so much that we know what right and wrong is. So we want to be fair. Fairness becomes so important. But often we forget to be merciful, to be charitable, to forgive the mistakes of others. We put conditions in everything. This parable bugs me. The first guys get totally ripped off, right? You know, when you think about all the people Jesus called, you and I have come late in the hour. So this is the Spiritists. And the guy changes his mind and says, I love this parable. Because now, being the worker of the 11th hour, I'm getting all of the benefits of those. And there have been many. And they were not always Spiritists. Spiritism is fairly young. Right? We just had a number of 150 years anniversaries of a number of Spiritist events. But it has not existed for 2 full centuries yet. Civilization has existed as we know it for at least 10 times or more that same time. And everything that happened leading to Spiritism was part of that collective learning that the spirits talk about it before. And we are benefiting for all of those. Even with all of the mistakes they made, because they weren't fully aware. They couldn't understand everything. So they made mistakes. They had some wrong understanding. How many interpretations of the Bible have we seen that were actually harmful along the way? But humanity has survived all of that, has gone beyond those mistakes. And with Spiritism now, we start to find and understand the reasons why that has happened and why it could not have happened any other way. So that's why, coming in at the last lecture, the 11th hour of the year, last lecture of the year, it's a reflection. And why am I a Spiritist? Can I call myself? Sometimes, we are often very harsh judges on ourselves. And people say, I'm not a true Spiritist. I'm not a real Spiritist because I make so many mistakes that a true Spiritist would never make. I'm jealous. I can be envious. I was angry without reason. I offended people I like. I offended people I don't like. So how can I be a Spiritist? Well, Spiritism and being a Spiritist is not about being perfect. Because if we were perfect, guess what? We wouldn't be here. The only reason we're in this colony called Earth is because we are imperfect. So what is it that, defines a Spiritist? Whatever happens to you, and this is by the Spirituality Angeles, good or bad, move on with enthusiasm, leaving misfortune behind. And the good and bad that happens to us could be our own cause. Right? Could be the mistakes we make. And we will pay somehow for those mistakes. That is the most inevitable law of them all. But understanding that and recognizing that we're still fallible, that we still make mistakes every day, but that we are willing to recognize them, accept our imperfection, and try and promise to ourselves to do better next time with enthusiasm. So never give up on yourself. Never give up on those around you who are insistently imperfect. It is part of the journey. It is those ropes that we have to pull up, just like others above us. Whether we see them or not, whether we recognize them or not, whether we value them or not, many, many others are way above us, helping us go up as well. Do not for a moment think that your evolution, that my evolution, is the fruits of my own merits alone. Coming here to the TSS, working with each of the volunteers that we work every week, they are the ones pulling me up every day. And that's what we need to be always conscious of. It brings us to a level of harmony with one another. To understand that we're in it together, for the good or the bad. And what I love more about the TSS is the enthusiasm that we get year after year. And I thank every one of you who pulls my ropes up. And I hope one day to be doing this for the others that I can help. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Joe.
Questions?
Yes.
Comments?
Questions?
I have a comment, yes.
Go ahead, please.
And I hope everybody can sort of share a feeling because, thank you very much, very great. When you start to study a lot of the Spiritism, at least I do, sometimes you have this willingness to try to, as you say, to help others, but the question on how can you help others is the true important question. And many times I felt that I tried that no, to help others I need to convert others to Spiritism. But as you've said, we should not judge anyone, right? There is no such thing as only the vineyard, the owner of the vineyard is the one who can actually reward people. So it's not up to us. And when we practice what you said, which is love and justice and help others achieve God, there are many different ways to do that. As you said, not only giving food, many times for someone can be listening. If you're talking with someone who's in pain, who has no beliefs, it's not going to be trying to explain Spiritism to this person. That's a belief that I had. It's not going to be trying to explain your own point of view, because this is only a guidance on how can we grow. And I think that's worth sharing, because it's very important at this time and with all these lessons that it's all about helping others and unifying people and helping everybody move up. And to be able to do that, you need to be very conscious that people are very different and be able to not, at least I, on my own personal mistake, not all the times trying to impose your way of viewing. It's always loving, always helping, always being open and humble to respect different beliefs, not incurring same mistakes that we had in the past.
It's very true. Our example is the biggest lesson that we can give others. Right? And Givaldo talks about this, how he used to work at a government agency, and people would come to say, why do you smile every day? Why are you so happy every day? Right? And he says, that's because I'm happy. I'm happy with what God has given me. Also, kind of joking, I'm old enough to remember a dictator in Brazil called João Figueiredo, President General Figueiredo. And he had many mistakes. But bad or good, he did transition the country into democracy. But trying to do this, there was a lot of powers that were being affected by the transition. And trying to be good, and like we try to be good, he said this famous phrases, I will make this country a democracy even if I have to arrest everybody who disagrees with me. So we can't say we make everybody Spiritist even if we have to shun away everyone who doesn't agree with Spiritism. That's not how it works. Right? It is in the essence of Spiritism that it has to be a true logical belief, a rational faith, not a blind faith, not a told you faith. So if we ever have friends that or acquaintances that we always try to encourage to come to the TSS, and they say they will, but they never do. Right? Should we be discouraged with them? Should we kind of some way, I don't know, punish them somehow for not doing this? Of course not. Everyone has their time. We saw this in the parable. There are people who are there in the first hour. There are people there in the 11th hour. Who are we to know in which hour we're coming in? We're certainly not the first hours, guys.
Any other questions, comments? All right, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
That's great. I think it's a great lecture for us to think about what we're going to do in the new year, right? That is about to come. So let us all get prepared for the passes. I want to thank everyone who's watching us through the internet. See you guys next year. And for those who are here, just be silent and prayer. And we're going to start the passes in a second.